So today's reading is from the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi, probably written about 430 BC. The background to the book is that the Jews had long last been allowed to return from exile back to Jerusalem to rebuild the city walls. This project had been managed by the project manager extraordinaire Nehemiah. And as well as rebuilding the walls, he had spearheaded reforms like helping the poor, offering tithes and offerings faithfully, not breaking the Sabbath, convincing people to not be marrying foreigners who were worshipping other gods. Nehemiah had then returned to the service of the Persian king, and rather guttingly, the Jewish people had drifted into everything they knew to be wrong. So tithes were being ignored, Sabbath was being broken, marriages were breaking down. Perhaps worst of all, the leaders, the priests, were becoming corrupt. And these are the areas that Malachi is addressing, and he's full on in addressing them. He doesn't bother about being nice or inoffensive or culturally relevant. He is concerned about God's people living lives worthy of the calling that's on them to be God's chosen people, to demonstrate his glory and light to the whole world. So let's dig in. Chapter 1, verse 2, God declares over them just as he declares over us again and again, for I have loved you. But they're doubting it. They're asking, but how have you loved us? So God gives a little bit of history in terms of the fact that Jewish people have been chosen and loved, and God's covenant has never been broken. Verses 1 to 5 then is about how God has loved Israel with a covenant love. Verse 6 almost talks about how the people of Israel have loved God, and the answer is not very well. So Malachi starts first by talking to the leaders, the priests, and gives them an absolute rollicking. The very ones who should be set an example for the others of wholehearted and full devotion to God are doing the exact opposite. They are giving God their second best in worship. They're offering crippled and diseased animals. They know full well what offering is acceptable to God, and they're not doing it. I wonder, what does it look like for us to be giving God our second best or our first best in worship? Chapter 2 continues with the challenge to the leaders, saying they're leading people astray. Now, verses 10 to 16 shifts focus off of the priests onto the people. Verse 10, have we not all one Father? Why do we break faith with one another? Right relationships matter. Right relationships in the body of Christ really matter. A united church makes God visible. So we must speak well of each other, of our brothers and sisters. Every time we say negative things about each other, it's the spiritual equivalent of self-harming. We're harming the body of which we are a part. So God hates that. And then verses 11 to 12 is about marrying those who don't love God but worship other gods. Choose wisely who you will marry. If loving God with all you are and serving him with all you have is the most important thing about you, then it's going to be really, really hard to be married to someone who doesn't feel about God the same way that you feel. Lastly, 13 to 16, we see how seriously God takes marriage, the marriage covenant, and it grieves him when that covenant gets broken. Marriage is not just about love, it's love welded to commitment. In our society where marriage breakup is so common, we need to hold on to a high view of marriage. If and when we get married, regularly invest into it, love our partner, not just with our feelings but with our will. It's a decision of